Hello and welcome to another edition of The Tigers Down Under. I'm your host, as always, Alex, and with me today I have Dan. How are you, Dan?
Yeah, I'm alright. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. It looks like the string of great away performances has unfortunately come to an end with a disappointing 1-0 defeat at Derby, but a bit more of a positive display than Fulham, even though it was the same scoreline. It seemed that we were creating a few more chances, and Bowen had a great chance in that first half that if he'd put away, we could have really taken something out of that game and really kicked on and put a few more past them. But what was your overall feeling of the game?
I think, I was probably disappointed that we didn't pick up points, but in saying that, as you sort of mentioned, it was a better performance than what we put out against Fulham. I was a little surprised with some of the with the lineup. I thought Eves had been playing well enough recently that he would at least retain his starting spot. I was somewhat surprised to see Magennis come straight back in, particularly on a return from a soft tissue injury. I thought it was pretty surprising.
I mean, you would have expected potentially he'd come off the bench for a couple of games and then maybe start a game if he scored a goal or something like that. But I agree. I think Eves was pretty harshly done by, considering he scored the hat-trick in the Cup, and then he was a bit flat against Fulham, but so were a few people. So a bit harsh to treat him or judge him on that performance alone.
I didn't actually know that Device and Grzycki were even in the frame to not play. So that took me by surprise. But in saying that, I thought Tafazoli was outstanding coming in for Device. Bowler, not quite, not bad, but not outstanding, I didn't think.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it was the press conference right after we'd signed Samuelson when McGann was talking about him and talking about the squad for Derby, and he sort of alluded to this sort of mystery two players who were going to miss the game, and I sort of thought by the fact he was being so cute and hiding the identity of the players, it sort of suggested that they were fairly important. I think a lot of people sort of jumped to the conclusion it was going to be Bowen and Grzycki, but Device is pretty important to the lineup as well. I saw the stat after the game that I think it's now 8 games without a win when he's, which is a pretty crazy stat when you think, sure he's been in pretty good form for us, but he wouldn't be probably the first name that comes to mind as someone who's so important to our lineup.
Yeah, no, it's that's a crazy stat to think about. It's interesting when you have defenders who, I mean, we've been saying that Burke and Device have built a really strong partnership, but it's really interesting when you see that, when one of them, when Device is out, how big that his omission of an impact that can have on the team.
Yeah, and look, I mean, it's interesting because I didn't actually think Tafazoli had a bad game. I thought he was quite good. So it's hard to say, and look, it could just be a coincidence. It could just be bad luck that that's sort of the way the stat has fallen. And it was a pretty well taken goal for them. Question marks over whether Long should have done more if he's coming out of his box or he's coming out of his area to claim the ball. You need to be making some sort of contact with it, and because he doesn't, that's sort of what causes the goal. But it's hard to be too critical of too many of the players. I thought Bowen had that great chance, and I think it was the first half, where, as I said before, I mean, if he puts that away, it's a completely different game. But yeah, maybe Magennis a bit rusty up top. Who else? I mean, Elder looked pretty good coming back from his injury, so he slotted right back in. But look, yeah, I mean, what were your thoughts on the squad? Were you disappointed with any of the performances, or was it just a matter of pretty unlucky on the day?
I think overall it was just, I thought it was pretty even, and as you said, if when that ball fell to Bowen in the box, I thought, here we are, 1-0 up for sure, but he's fluffed it, but I thought overall it was pretty even. It's hard to say. No, I didn't think anyone had a terrible game. There were a couple that were, only average, but I think to see both of those, both the new guys in Samuelson and Wilkes come on, I mean, it was good to see them come on. I was, I probably again think Eves was hard done by not to get, on the park at all. But I thought Samuelson had some really nice touches.
Yeah.
Was involved in some good things. I thought, I don't know, how late did Wilkes come on? That's the question. It was quite late in the game, and 70, so he had 20 minutes. I don't really remember him doing
Yeah.
a lot, to be honest. I remember a couple of half decent runs, but sort of lacking a bit of polish, and I guess some of that's lacking that that understanding of the players around. Because I think there was one or two passes that went astray between him and someone else, but I can only imagine. We've got some extra competition for places, and more young, talented guys. So looking forward, we're still in a strong position.
The topic of conversation, which is the fact that since the last podcast we've signed not one but two players, which is pretty remarkable considering we go some January windows without even signing two players. But Samuelson coming in from West Ham, Wilkes coming in from Barnsley, Wilkes being probably the most protracted transfer saga that we've had in recent times, considering that it ended up actually coming off. As you said, Samuelson coming on looked really tricky with his feet. He sort of looked to me the sort of player that, when you watch his YouTube highlights, he's kind of that player. You see his highlights, he's doing skill moves, he's going up past players, he's doing all sorts of things, and he came on against Derby and that's what he produced, which is great. You kind of want to see that. You don't want him to be really cautious and in his shell and nervous, and he strikes you as the sort of guy that might be a bit lightweight and pushed off the ball pretty easily, but look, he seemed to play pretty well. And Wilkes, as you say, he's probably going to take a little while to get used to the side, but he hasn't really been in the Barnsley side either, so he's just probably a bit rusty, having not played a whole lot of senior football. And he's the sort of guy who he sort of strikes me as someone that if he's really confident, if he's in a rich vein of form, he'd be a really dangerous player, and he'd be someone you'd really love to have in the starting 11. But he's also the sort of player that, he seems to be a confidence player, at least from what I've watched of him of the 20 whole minutes. It's not a whole lot to judge him on, in fairness, but he's got the pace and the skill as the winger, but doesn't strike me as someone who could really be involved in a game if as he came on at 1-0 down. I think he had one pretty tame shot, but and look, that opinion could be completely off the mark, and he could come in and really surprise me, which I really hope he does. I know it's only a loan with an option to buy, and if he impresses, and I think he has a few off-field issues as well. I think he's got a looming court case. If that all pans out the right way, I suspect that's probably why we've gone the loan to buy rather than just buying him outright. But what's your opinion overall of the signing of the two players? I know you just said great to get another two young players in the door. I think we're really investing well in having quite a young, exciting squad with a lot of potential, and it can only be positive.
Yeah, I think overall it's hard to complain too much. We've added another player in those forward positions. I think Samuelson can play as one of those, as either a winger or a attacking midfielder. Wilkes can play as a winger. They're sorts of where we're thinking maybe we needed a bit of extra personnel in case something goes wrong. Krasicki only a minor. I think he's only rested for the week, but we lost. He was out, and Bowler comes in. But if there was something wrong with, either Bowler or Bowen, then all of a sudden, before Wilkes came in, who goes there? Do you push Irvine out wide again or something, and play someone else through the middle? So it's good to have just a bit of extra squad depth.
Yeah, definitely. And on the other side of the coin, I think one of the biggest bits of business that we've been trying to do over the window is to ship Henriksen, Milinkovic out, and now it looks like Dicko as well, coming into the last 6 months of his deal. What's your perception of that? What do you think it's likely that they'll still be with us at the end of the window? We've been trying since summer, still not a whole lot of interest in any of them. I think I saw something saying that if Dicko's going to leave, it's either got to be to Vitesse or it's got to be to an MLS or a Chinese club, because of the fact that he's now played for, he's played for two clubs in the season so far, and I think the rules state that he can't play for a third in this European season, I guess.
Yeah, well, I suppose that would be the same as when we had when Ben Arthur came to
Yeah.
us and then left. I think he had to sit out for a few months
Yeah.
because we were we the third club or something anyway. But
Yeah, well, because he obviously played a bit for Newcastle, I suspect, and then for us, and then yeah, I think he went to a French club and ended up just playing in their under 23s or something because he couldn't
yeah,
play for the senior squad.
yeah. So I mean, I'm hopeful that something can happen in the next week or so. I'm not. Uh, I'm probably obviously not really. I'm not honestly not expecting much to happen. It would be nice if some of that was done just to tie up those loose ends,
And free up some of the wage bill, yeah.
get those wages out of the club. Leave us in a little bit of a stronger financial position come the end of the season. But I mean, if it has to be that they wind down their last 6 months and go on a free, then so be it. I think what's counted against, well, at least against Henriksen and Milinkovic, is that they haven't played a lot of football.
Yeah.
And I think like there's a lot of clubs that don't want to take that or spend that money on a player who hasn't played recently, especially at this time of year. You go, okay, so I bring him in, I've got to get them up to fitness. And then there might be half a dozen games at the end of the year or something where someone like Henriksen would get a chance to actually play some football. And is it worth that much of an investment for 5 or 6 games? I guess that's sort of where I assume the other clubs are sort of situated.
Yeah, no, and fair enough. And then in loan news, potentially one out. Well, sorry, there has been one outgoing in terms of Fleming, who's joined Bolton on loan, which I think is a great move for him. It's interesting because of the fact that obviously we have Elder and Kingsley as our left back options, and we did recently have both of them injured, which raises the question that it's not unlikely that could happen again. I guess in that situation we seem comfortable enough playing Lehigh at left back, which seems to be our solution. So we were quite happy to let Fleming go out on loan, which I think is great for him. Great experience playing for a senior club, presumably going to be playing week in, week out. I think he debuted for them on the weekend and by all reports was pretty much their best player, which is great to hear. And it gives him a bit of character as well. He's in a side that's very likely going to get relegated, but gives him a bit of an experience for a relegation fight, and that sort of experience can only be a help for him.
Yeah, I think for those sorts of guys who, we have high hopes for in terms of the future of the club, it is crucial to their development. If they're to reach the levels that I expect and probably you expect, and there's probably many people actually within the club itself that expect them to reach that, they need to be out playing football. And as it stands at the moment, then the opportunities are not there within the club, so it makes sense to send them somewhere. There's nothing wrong with spending 6 months in League One or League Two, just to get that first team football, to experience a relegation fight or a promotion fight or whatever it is with a lower league team. I think the other one was that they were suggesting maybe would be was maybe Mackenzie. I think they were saying possibly they were looking to try and get to go out, but I don't know if there was anything even somewhat concrete about an actual club or whether it was just Hull Daily Mail or something. So I just remember seeing his name in relation to the Fleming loan, but they are probably the two most prominent of our youngsters in terms of that have been involved with the first team. But
the other one I was going to mention would be Lewis Potter, because the obvious question now is that with the attacking reinforcements that we've brought in, and he has been in great form for us, so I'd love for him to continue getting opportunities. But if they're not going to be as often as they were, whether it is worth sending him out even to a League 2 club where he might not be as much of a focus potentially. You wouldn't want to put him into too overwhelming a situation, but just to give him that senior experience as well, maybe that'd be good for him. Maybe it's better for him to still be around the club for another 6 months and then have a season out on loan. I'm not sure, but the club obviously rates him quite highly, and it'd be great to see him sort of getting a bit more senior experience. If he can get half a dozen goals under his belt as well, I'm sure that'd be great for his confidence.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he is one that would absolutely benefit. I mean, he came into the first team and didn't look out of place, but just with just how the squad is at the moment, and with the acquisitions that we've had, as you mentioned, that it would be a great decision, a great opportunity for him to go somewhere and be able to play more football. Just keep scoring goals and developing his game further, because he's already got a lot of really likable characteristics as a footballer.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll move on now to talk about the big game that we've got this weekend, and the fantastic news that came through. I think it was yesterday that it's now officially a sellout against Chelsea in the FA Cup, our largest FA Cup crowd in over 40 years, and our first sellout in over 3 years, which is quite remarkable. I mean, I guess when you consider that, the obvious train of thought would be, oh well, look, it's because it's Premier League opposition or what have you. But 3 years ago, we were in the Premier League and we were not getting sellouts. And there was a whole lot of friction with the alums and all sorts of things around the club. So it's a huge testament to the way that the club has turned everything around, that there's this feel-good atmosphere back around the club, and that there's people really excited about coming to watch Hull City play games. And I really hope that it's a fantastic game to match the atmosphere.
Look, I'm really looking forward to the game. I think it's, as you said, it's awesome news. That we have a sellout. There's nothing. There's going. It's been a while since, I think, 3 years since we've had since the KCOM's really been rocking. So, I think regardless of the opposition, whether it's Chelsea, whoever it is, I think it's this game is a great opportunity, to play against, to get to play against Premier League opposition. But I don't think that's necessarily why it's a sellout. I think just with the work that's been done on the pitch and off the pitch over the last, say 12 months, that some of the negative perceptions of the club are slowly starting to turn. We're starting to have reason for the locals to want to go to games again, and I think this is a really good demonstration of the supporter base that we have, and hopefully we put on a good performance on the weekend, and we can carry that through the end of the season, because I think we have we've got some really important games in the league coming up, and if you had 10 or 12,000 Tigers supporters there, then it might make all the difference.
Yeah, and you know what I mean. As much as it's going to be great watching us go toe to toe with one of the best Premier League clubs in the world, or best Premier League clubs in the Premier League, I'm almost just excited to watch us play in front of a full house. It's just going to be a fantastic vision and a fantastic callback to sort of the glory days of us in the Premier League. And who knows? In terms of the game itself and the atmosphere that this sellout has now created, would you like to see us playing a full-strength side? Or, as you're sort of referencing, we've got some pretty big games coming up in the league as well, which hopefully a lot of these supporters will stick around and come to those games as well. Would you want to see us sort of go for it in the Cup? I mean, Chelsea just drew against a 10-man Arsenal. They haven't been in fantastic form. I think they lost to Bournemouth recently as well. In a way, that they're really there for the taking.
Yeah, look, I think there's no reason why we can't play a full-strength team realistically. We've just been talking about the couple of acquisitions we've got, a couple of guys coming back from injury. The squad's maybe not as dire straits as it appeared only a week or so ago. So I think we we're in a position. I mean, it's one game. You may as well just put out the best 11. If we win, we go through the next round. If not, some of the players that we have that are in our first 11 probably will have never played at a full KCOM, and will maybe never have played, just against such a high opposition, a high level opposition in high stakes games. So I think overall it's a great opportunity, and we'd be foolish to put out a second string team just with it trying to keep an eye on the league ahead, even though our McCann's objective is top 6. we're not too far away, although we can't really afford to drop too many more points.
Well, and it'll be really interesting to see how someone like Bowen goes against Chelsea, because for all the talk that he's a prospective Premier League player in the making, it'll be good for him as a player to test himself against one of those high quality sides. And a guy like, as you're referring to, guys like Jackson Irvine, who've been at the club for about 3 years now, have never played in front of a crowd as large as this against a side as good as this. So it's going to be really exciting all round. Do you have a score prediction? Do you get any sort of sense that we could snatch something in this, or look, if we can just keep it to a couple of goal margin, that's sort of good enough as a result?
Look, I think there's no reason why we couldn't pull off a result, but everyone would have to be on their A game. I think, hopefully, Grzycki has had the week. Maybe hopefully he's a little bit refreshed, a little bit of extra spring in his step, and he can burn around behind the defence and tease some goals up for either himself or for Eves or for Bowen. But I think it's going to be a very tough game. I think it's going to be close either way. To be honest, I think it's only going to be a 1-0 either way sort of a game.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah, I'd like to think, given McGann's attacking style, that he might sort of take that gung-ho, go for it approach, because at the end of the day, if it's an entertaining, high attacking sort of game, then even if we lose, it's still sort of a positive, and it's almost like a marketing exercise. As cynical as that is to say, it's a marketing exercise to all these supporters to say, hey, look at the sort of football that we can play. So even if we lost, like 4-2 or something like that, he might try and go for that sort of approach just to produce sort of an exciting game. But who knows, it could also be one that ends up being quite a tight, fiercely contested game. So it'll be great to watch. I mean, unfortunately it's on at 4:30, which makes it a really tough time for us to watch, but luckily enough it's the Australia Day long weekend, which always helps with the recovery process these days. So looking forward to it very much so. We've also then got a league game during the week against Huddersfield, who are 20th in the table at the moment, only one win in their last 5. So presents a really good opportunity for us to whether it's to bounce back from Chelsea or just to bounce back from our league defeat to Derby, and try and get back into that chasing playoff place pack. Of course, there's been a couple of games the last few days as catch-up games and FA Cup organised games, which has meant that we're now, 7 points off the playoffs, which is a bit frustrating, given we were only 3 points off not so long ago.
But I think we have a game in hand against...
We do, that's true.
Is Nottingham or something in 6th?
Preston in 6th, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So that's true. Yeah, we do have a game in hand, which does help. So theoretically, it could be 4 points if we were to win that game in hand. But what do you make of the game against Huddersfield? I guess it's sort of hard to read our form lately. We're sort of, it almost even doesn't matter the quality of the opposition. It's just the quality of our performance that really sort of dictates how we play.
Yeah, we do have an interesting time trying to read our form line lately, but I think I want to say that we should get up and beat them, and we should get up and beat them. I think it's going to be one of those ones where it depends. It's really going to depend on who plays on against Chelsea, who of those can back up to play against Huddersfield, and sort of what squad goes out. But I think it's a really good opportunity for some of those guys who have just come in to really make a mark or to stamp their claims, for starting positions against Huddersfield. So I think I see no reason why we can't win. I think sadly it sort of depends on if Bowen plays against Chelsea, if he gets through that unscathed, and whether he's earned a rest yet, or whether he lines up again and again. And I feel like a lot seems to ride on him. When if he scores, we seem to win. If he doesn't, which seems to be the case lately, he's maybe tailed off a little bit with his goal scoring. The results don't seem to go our way, so it's a tricky one.
Yeah, certainly it'd be an interesting one. I do want to say, perhaps a bit optimistically, I think we'll edge it maybe 2-0, 2-1. But look, our form line at the moment is almost impossible to read, so I'm not going to put too much weight into that. It was interesting. I think there was an article in the Hull Daily Mail last week about stats about the number of points needed to break into the playoffs, and I can't remember the number, but it was from our last, how many games we have left? 16 games. I think we essentially have to win 10 of them to stand a chance, which is a bit worrying when you look at it in that sense, but sometimes those stats and looking at average points for the playoffs, all that sort of thing, are a bit overblown. I think at the end, 7 points behind Preston, but 4, and that means that we have to win 2 more games than them for the rest of the season, and obviously the sides between us and them as well. But that's all we can hope for, and hopefully we can start that with a win against Huddersfield next Wednesday morning. But just to finish off, before we sign off, we always do our little football flashback of the week, and I thought very appropriately, just about this time 6 years ago now, which makes me feel incredibly old, we did beat Southend 2-0 in the FA Cup to book our place in the 5th round of what would eventually be a run to the final. It was a game that I was fortunate enough to be at, so it's a great memory for me, and very significantly, of course, it was against Phil Brown. So one of the few times that we've matched up against one of Phil Brown's sides, and it was Fright who scored both goals on that day. And I think his second goal was a really great piece of individual skill, but his first goal was just really funny because we'd started him, Sagbo and Danny Graham up top, and it was a really wet sort of dour day, and I can't remember who played the through ball. It might have been, I want to say maybe Quinn. I can't remember off the top of my head, or maybe Myler. But I think it was a through ball played for Graham, and then Fright just kind of ran across him and snatched the ball off his feet because he just didn't trust Graham to be able to do anything with it, and I don't think anyone did at that point. And he scored the goal himself. But a very, very memorable victory for myself. I'm not sure if it was televised, so I'm not sure how much of a memory you would have of the game, but perhaps more in the context of that FA Cup run. Looking back on that season and that FA Cup run, like how incredible it was, and your memories of that.
Well, I was lucky enough I found some highlights of that game just before we came on air, so I had a bit of a look, and.
So do you remember? Did you say who it was who played? Who was the one who played the through ball?
So Myler played the ball in for Graham, and he sort of stuffed his first touch, and then Fright nicked it off his toes. Graham was quite upset about that, and then Matty Fright sort of darted around to the left side of the goal, and swung it back across the keeper into the bottom right hand corner. It was a great finish, and his second goal was. He picked it up out wide and then just took it into the box and just sent the defender the wrong way and then just rifled it. It was a great finish from really close and a really tight angle. Did really well, but I thought the interesting, or not interesting is probably not the word, but we started well with a great ball to George Boyd, who then played a perfect ball across to Danny Graham, and he rolled it straight at the keeper, the Southend keeper, which sort of summed up his time at the club. Really, I think I heard in the call they said he'd scored 2 goals in a ridiculous amount of time in 6 or 8 months or something. He didn't have a great period with us in terms of goal scoring, but I think there was. Southend themselves had some good opportunities. It was actually looked like it would have been a really good game to be at. They had
it was a very nerve-wracking game.
Yeah, a great shot from outside the box that hit had Harper beat and then hit the crossbar and bounced down to him, and a couple of really good opportunities that they had, but.
I've just looked it up, and the goalkeeper for Southend was actually David Bentley, who I think is now the QPR keeper, and I think at one point we were actually linked to. So they had a couple of decent players in their side.
It was, but it was a good win, and as you said, or alluded to earlier, that it was part of our run to the final. I remember watching the final, and that was. It was a crazy time, but that was about the time where I first started following City, so these are all sort of I guess my foundation memories for Hull City, so it's nice to look back on those on some of the good times that we've had, and a great FA Cup run. And hopefully we can continue that this weekend against Chelsea.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, if we can get past Chelsea, it just opens the doors to something pretty special. And I think it's interesting when it gets to the point where the FA Cup stops being a distraction and starts being a chance of, well, we could actually win something here. And I mean, I think for Bruce, it really probably only came in the quarter-final against Sunderland, maybe, where he sort of started to think, hang on, if we win this game, we're at Wembley. And then, of course, it eventuated that we had Sheffield United in the semi-final, and that then gave us a huge chance at making the final, and it all kind of went from there. But, I mean, it's unfortunate to hear about the financial troubles that Southend are having, and I'm hoping that they're not going to end up in the same way as Bury and a couple of other clubs, because, as much as it was sort of a dilapidated sort of stadium and sort of your typical English stadium, that was what made it so brilliant, is that, while I was over there, I went to the Emirates, and I went to even Selhurst Park's not fantastic, but I went to a couple of those sorts of grounds. But then to go to sort of like a quote unquote real football ground where you're sort of in the tin shed sort of end with dingy little seats, and sort of just everyone's standing and singing for the whole game. It was just it's a fantastic experience. So hopefully they can sort of get things going again and kind of get out of any sort of financial troubles they're in. And as you say, hopefully for us, we can go on and get a great victory against Chelsea this weekend, which would be fantastic and a hugely memorable result if we were to do it in front of a full house. So thank you for joining me tonight, Dan.
No problems.
And thank you everyone for listening in. Hopefully everyone is up and supporting City Saturday night, and of course Wednesday morning against Huddersfield, where hopefully we can get a big 3 points. But until next week, come on City.
You've been listening to the official Hull City Australia podcast. For more discussion, join us on Facebook in the Hull City AFC Australian Supporters Group, or follow us on Twitter at Hull City AFC Oz. The music was created by Amber and Black.
Going higher and higher. There's no turning back 'cause you're out.